The End of Dragon's elite specialization for Ranger is the Untamed. And the mechanic is essentially allowing you to toggle between unleashing yourself or unleashing your pet. And while you are unleashed, you will gain more damage and you'll take more damage. And while you are not unleashed, you will take less damage but deal less damage. And you'll also have some synergies with the traits that essentially when you are unleashed, you'll get a certain boon that's more aggressive like quickness, or when you're not unleashed, you'll get more defensive boon like stability. But what is more interesting is that your pet has a lot more play to it. So the Untamed essentially allows you to control all of your pet's abilities. So normally people would complain, oh, my pet I don't really have control over it. Well, as the Untamed, you have a lot more control over it, and that can be a good thing or a bad thing, because in a lot of cases, you don't want to have control over your pet's abilities because they just are going to do more damage if they just use them off cooldown. But for stuff where it's like CC, for example, on the Smoke Scale or the Gazelle, you can actually time your CCs very well, and you can bounce your opponent between your CCs and your pet CCs for these stun lock combos. So the Untamed is pretty cool in terms of allowing you more control over your pets and combos that you can do with your pets, but there are definitely some issues. I would say that the Untamed is probably one of the specs that needs the most work to get it to a finished state. And mind you, it's in beta right now, so of course there's going to be a lot of bugs and it's going to be unfinished. And you have to remember, in the past, even HOT and POF specs, they were not even finished on launch of the expansions that those specs came out in, and they'll still be changing those specs afterwards. Like Chronomancer was getting reworks in the middle of Path of Fire, and that came out in Heart of Thorns. So you have to remember that your expectations may be a little bit too high if you're calling things trash if it's already in beta. So let's go over the mechanics of the Untamed, and then we'll show some builds that I've been using and then go over some gameplay. When your pet is unleashed, they will gain access to an F1 that allows them to port to the target, which is kind of nice in a lot of situations where your pet is just pathing around all this terrain, going up ramps just to get around to the enemy, and it takes like a minute for them to get to the target, and by then it's too late anyways, or they've already just gone down. It makes it too easy for them to play around your AI. Well, the port is pretty nice for allowing your pet to stick to the target, so that's kind of nice. The F2 though it's like no damage, and it requires them to be CC'd already, so you have to combo it with yourself, and then your pet will do its rending binds, which will remove 2 boons and slow the target, but I feel that it's too conditional and not enough effect in that conditional. And then the F3 is a projectile blocking field that if the target is CC'd, they will get chilled. Once again, I feel like the conditional is too conditional, and that there's really no difference between any of the pets when they're unleashed, because they all have the same abilities. You could use the kingdoms of animals or the roles that were essentially allowed the soul beast to have different abilities when merged, and kind of like give a different, even like the condition could just be different on the same kind of mechanic. Now obviously you have usage of all of the skills, and that can be better in some situations and worse in others. Like for the Gazelle, I think it's really good because the kick ability is on a 6-second cooldown, and that does a lot of damage if you can time it with your CCs. But in a lot of cases, the Gazelle will do its kick ability and someone's already moving, so it just wastes it and it's not really timed well. And the head toss, obviously that's always on the F2, so that was going to be controlled by you anyways. And then the charge ability, yeah, that could be usefully timed as well. So I really like the Gazelle with the Untamed because the timing of the abilities was a little bit more important. So I think it's good. It just needs more work. For example, like in Beastmaster, you have all these traits that give you synergy when you use a beast ability, but at the end of the day you only have one beast ability, even though you have all these other usable technically beast abilities, right? Like none of these count as beast abilities. And I know there's an internal cooldown on it, but yeah, I think maybe putting at least, you know, beast synergy on, you know, a couple of the Untamed abilities, or even maybe not even these, but maybe on the Untamed abilities, put some beast synergy in there. And that's kind of what makes the elite specs so fun, is the synergies that you're allowed to get from the traits. So yeah, Untamed has some issues with its design that just needs a little bit more work, but I think it has a lot of potential to, you know, for example, there is a really cool utility called Unnatural Traversal, which gives you the ability to port to a target. And it's a 20-second cooldown if you land it. So it can give you the ability to do big bursts with your pet, right? Because you can use the Untamed ability, right, to port the pet to the target, but you can also port your pet to the target by using Unnatural Traversal. And then since you've ported to your pet, you can pet swap, and your Unnatural Traversal essentially ports your pet in, because your pet swap ports the, you know, the pet to where you are. So there's a lot of potential for combos on this class, and I think there's, you know, it just needs a little bit of, you know, a little bit more work. I think what is really nice about the Untamed is the CC Grandmaster. So whenever you land a CC, you will be reducing the recharge of all of your skills. So if you look here, I'll land a CC here, and that will reduce the recharge of my ability. And this skill, which is normally a 40-second cooldown, is going to come off cooldown a lot sooner there, because I'm landing CCs into my burst. I don't know how useful that is in PvE to be CCing people, but yeah, this feels like a PvP spec, right? Because in World v World, you know, having pets is not going to be that useful in these large scale situations, but in like duelist situations, or even small scale PvP, or even roaming, it could be good. So the top line is pretty interesting. I like the quickness trait. Whenever you're unleashed and you CC someone, you'll get quickness, and that allows even more burst potential for the build. And then there's like restorative strikes, which can also be really good on a berserker build to give you more sustain and not have to go wilderness survival to get your healing. And then there's just more Untamed, unleashed stuff here, which I think they could scale it up a little bit more. But otherwise, yeah, the traits I feel are not too interesting. It's more about the combo and synergy with the pet that is really what makes Untamed what it is. So the first build I am going to show you guys is kind of like a bunny thumper melee build with greatsword and hammer. I was taking the berserker amulet with the Doliac runes, double cleansing because there's not really too much cleansing on this build, energy on the hammer, and savagery on the greatsword. The traits were marksmanship with beast mastery and untamed. It feels like beast mastery is pretty required on Untamed, but you're just going to be taking the normal greatsword traits here with the shout trait, and then the obvious moment of clarity with remorseless and lesser call of the wild. So in Untamed, I just take all the CC traits. You have quickness when you're unleashed, and you also have, whenever you CC, you'll reduce the recharge of your skills. So generally what I do with this build is there's a combo that's pretty interesting, and essentially what you do is, because you have Unnatural Traversal, you can precast your Hilt Bash into that, and you have to hit them from behind to stun them, which I won't do in this case because the goal back is to, it's out into the abyss. But essentially, you'll do Hilt Bash into your Unnatural Traversal. That'll stun the target if you hit them from behind, and then you swap pet, and then when they're stunned, you would swap the pet, and that would give out the Gazelle, which would have the access to either their charge you can cast or their kick, which wouldn't gain the best synergy with the Remorseless trait, but it'll still do quite a bit of damage. So I'm going to start out with the Smoke Scale. You can even do, like, you can send in your Smoke Scale first, and you can have that unleashed at first and just send that in, and then you'll change the unleashed to yourself, and you can even do the projectile block at first and stuff like that, and then swap the unleashed to yourself. But when you unleash or unleash, it'll actually change the mechanics of your hammer here. So when you're unleashed, your hammer just basically does more damage, and you want your pet to be CCing for you. And when you aren't unleashed, your pet is unleashed, your hammer will do a little bit more CC, so it'll do dazes here, it'll do immobilize on the 4, and it'll do a knockdown on the 5, and that'll reduce the recharge of a lot of your abilities. And the 2 skill will still pretty much just do damage. And the combo can be a little bit difficult to get into, but it's kind of gonna look like this. So you'll make sure that you're unleashed as yourself, and that'll give you quickness whenever you do a CC, and you will go in like this, and then you'll swap pet, do that, do the 2, and then you'll unleash back, and then you'll do the CCs on your hammer, and that'll recharge a lot of your skills here. And as you can see, the unnatural traversal is already off cooldown. You can untame your pet or unleash your pet and have that chase the target, and then you can stay on the target with unnatural traversal and have a lot of like chasing potential. So it is a pretty decent build for chasing kills here. I kind of like it as like a melee oriented playstyle, but the issue is that you don't really have a lot of Condi Cleanse. You do have the We Heal as One with the pet swap synergy, which gives you a lot of quickness, as well as the enhancing impact. So you have quite a bit of quickness uptime and chase potential. So it's kind of like this bursty, aggressive melee build. It's a lot of fun to play. The second build that I was using was still Berserker Amulet. I honestly think that condition builds can be good on Untamed, because there's this thing where you do less damage, right? But your condition damage isn't affected. So you could like be unleashing your pet and you could be taking less damage, but I didn't really try that out too much. I used the Berserker Amulet and the Trapper Rune on this build. I used 2 traps, and I used the Longbow with like just big damage, the Separation and Exposure Sigil, and then the Sword Warhorn with Energy Cleansing. So this is sort of like a massive like Berserker damage build with the Restorative Strikes for sustain, and then I went for Marksman Skirmishing, and I just went for like all of the sword and the longbow traits with quick draw. So essentially what I would do with this build is I would unleash myself for extra damage, and I would let my pets go in, and I had the Drake here as well. So the Drake, I don't think the Drake is the best pet for the Untamed, because a lot of the abilities you kind of just want them to use them off cooldown anyways, but the Drake is kind of tanky, so I used it anyways. And essentially what I do on this build is I would swap weapons very often, and the point blank shot would have a lower cooldown because of quick draw, and I would CC someone, and that would mean that I would get enhancing impact, and then after I get that quickness, I would do a quickness rapid fire, and then you'd also have the quickening Zephyr. And the elite skill here is going to give you 6 seconds of stability, resistance, resolution, and 50% damage reduction. So the build is purely squishy, but through the healing of Restorative Strikes, you can use Forest Fortification, and while this is active, you can actually reduce the recharge of it. And then when you want to swap to your sword, you can use the Hunter's Call with the quick draw, and that would give you a like 5-second cooldown on Hunter's Call, which is one of your hardest hitting abilities. And you can also use Monarch's Leap as a lot of mobility and survivability to reposition when you're getting focused, because you know people are going to try to focus you when you're playing a longbow ranger because they don't want you to be pew-pewing them. But you also have so much disengage because you have access to the smoke scale, and the sword warhorn gives you so much potential for getting like leaps and blasts through the smoke field. And also the Warhorn 5 is a CC, so you would actually get quickness if you're unleashed. So that was pretty nice. So yeah, this build didn't really use the unleash effect on the pet too often. I could swap it if I wanted the pet to be on them, but I mostly wanted it on myself because I want the the ability to get the quickness when I CC targets. But I would unleash my my pet when I would go into my sword, and you can do the healing spring trap here. And when it's down, you can just use your sword too to leap through that for a lot of combo finishers as well for healing yourself. So even though this was a very aggressive build in terms of the traits, there was a lot of survivability through the Trapper Rune, the healing spring, and just the ability to kite with the sword. Here's the Hammer Greatsword Untamed build, and I think this is going to show the Untamed mechanics a little bit better off. So in this match, we're going to play as a little bit of a burstier playstyle because we're going to be going in with the, you see the maul into the unnatural traversal there. We're going to go in with our pet as well, and I land a really good CC into my maul, which gives me a massive 8,000 maul. So we're going to get these kills here. Now, the combo I just did there was I used my heal skill and then precasted that into my pet swap, which means that when I gain quickness from the pet swap, I will also use the heal skill, which will copy that and give me more quickness. So that allows me to get a little bit more quickness uptime as well as fury uptime. So here I'm going to be chasing the Mirage. I do land the Hilt Bash into my unnatural traversal, but it's a Mirage, so they can dodge my maul. And I do have my kick here that I can use. I'm chasing, a Mirage is not the best idea because I don't have a lot of Condi Cleanse. And right there you could see I was moving my camera quite a bit because the Hammer 5 animation is quite slow. So you got to be really quick with reacting to the changing position of your enemies to land it. But yeah, I'm not really amazing against Condi builds because I don't really have that much Condi Cleanse. If they add a little bit more Condi Cleanse to that one trait that you cleanse Condis when you swap from Unleash to your pet or to yourself, that'd probably be a lot better. But for now, I have to get out of combat and just look for a different situation because I'm not running like a longbow, so I can't technically, contribute to fights if I'm at really low HP and low cooldowns on a full melee build. Now I do have my pet here, and as you can see, I did the pet's F1 into my maul there, so those are a really good combo there to be able to land my maul, and that's like something you really don't see on other ranger builds. Like you do have, if you swap pets, then you can kind of control when your pet does their F1 ability, but really having the Untamed gives you a lot more access to combos with your pet because you always have that. And as you can see there, I landed my Hilt Bash into unnatural traversal into the 10,000 maul there. So yeah, the burst combos, they're pretty scary, and because unnatural traversal gives you a 20-second cooldown if it actually hits the enemy, you can use it quite often. And with this build, I'm also using the CC trait, so that'll reduce the cooldown even further. So here I'm probably looking to do the Hilt Bash combo again. I do land it, but they have the Signet to give them invulnerability here. I'm going to land another CC, and as you can see there, I did my counterattack kick, and then right after I did my the smoke scale F1 to sort of like CC chain them and make sure that my smoke scales F1 lands. And those kind of CC combos can be really nasty. So that's kind of like why the smoke scale is such a good one, and why the Gazelle is such a good pet as well, because you want to be chaining those CCs very well. I got interrupted there on my Hilt Bash traversal combo, so that's unfortunate. But since my teammate is dead and there's like 3 players here, and the the Skyhammer is going off at the same time, I probably don't want to be going in there. So we're just gonna sit up here and wait for a better situation, maybe look for a kill, or I can just leave and look for another fight. So I'm looking around the map. I see their Mirage here. They evade my Maul, and I'm just going to try to look for a situation where I can get some damage on them. I land the Hilt Bash. The Maul does 9,000 damage, so that's pretty nice. But I'm going to Smoke Scale Field into my Leap here to get stealth, and they block it. I swap to my Hammer, and I unleash the pet so that I can use the stun when I do the unnatural traversal there. And then I put down my projectile blocking field so I can cleave out these clones, because usually clones are doing projectiles on the staff there. So I have my unnatural traversal up now, and I'm going to potentially go for the kill here. I land a good Maul, and they just used their invulns here. So I'm going to go for the Hilt Bash combo into a 9,000 Maul. It's pretty big damage there, but they blink away and I have to chase. So I'm using my heal skill there for a little bit more swiftness uptime. And if I had Fury, it would have given me more, but I didn't. And I land a really good hammer attack here, which is going to down them. Now I want to cleave here, so I swap to my Gazelle and use the kick ability. And yeah, I have to be careful though, because you can see here, my pet just dies. And that's one thing that I'd like to see as well, more of on the Untamed, is more options to allow your pet to survive, even just actively, to like use a skill that allows them to survive. You know, if they added more Untamed ability or Unleash abilities rather than just the 3 for every single pet, you could have specific pets having more survivability. So that would be nice, but for now I think that there's probably a lot of work that needs to be done on Untamed anyways. I don't get the cleave here because I think I waited too long to use my unnatural traversal, but I do hammer out quite a bit of damage afterwards to keep the momentum. At this point, yeah, I'm not really playing Conquest too strictly here because it's an unranked match that I'm not even going to get rewarded for because it's beta. So I really didn't want to cap this node, and I'm going to be forced to 1v1 a Mesmer anyways. I really don't like being put in these 1v1 situations. I am going to leap, and that actually did a 6,000 damage with that. And I also swap pet, which is going to give me a lot more stealth here. I do the unnatural traversal into the Hilt Bash, but it hits them in the front. It doesn't stun them. So I back off a little bit. It's 10 seconds cooldown to use the next one, so it's not that bad. Now I go in with the projectile field with my pet and just try to prevent. You can see, I think that was the Mesmer using Scepter and they were just blocking it. I mean, the projectile block is actually pretty nice, I would say. But yeah, the F2 skill when your pet is unleashed is really not that good. I do a nice counter block here, and don't go for the kill though, because I see that there's like 3 people here anyways, and the enemy team they have the bell or the hammer anyways. I do land the Hilt Bash combo there into my hammer 5, and as you can see, look, the cooldown on unnatural traversal is already like off. It's already off because I landed so many CCs while also landing it. So you really have a lot of chase potential on this build. Like your pet can port to the target, you can port to the target, and you can swap pets after you port to the target. And then yeah, it's just a really good chase potential. So normally, like on the Soul Beast, you'd have pretty good chase potential already, but I think this is even better. Now here, I'm trying to chase this Mesmer. They're using terrain, but my pet doesn't really care about that. And I swap pet here with the heal combo to get some quickness, but they go out of range, so my quickness isn't really that worth. I had like 25 might there, but I think there's a bug that, yeah, I have like permanent 23 might. I think there's a bug or something currently at the time of this, so not really sure how much might this build gets. You'd get a decent amount from the pet combo swap there, but yeah, I'm gonna die here because I overextended into conditions that I don't have cleanses for. But yeah, you'd have the pet swap combo, which would give you might, and then you would use the heal into that, and that would give you maybe like 12 might, which would give you some decent burst as well. But yeah, I am not, let's put it this way, I'm not the best Untamed player. This is I think this is probably one of the higher skill cap and even skill floor builds for Ranger, or specs for Ranger, And I think that's a good thing, right? Because a lot of people are always saying, oh, you get carried by the pet and stuff like that. Well, now you got to carry the pet yourself. So I think it's pretty good. It's just going to take players a long time to really get used to Untamed. It's not like the Mechanist where you kind of just let that thing free fire off cooldown. You actually have to time your abilities, combo them, and that's not something that I'm even good at after, you know, several matches of playing Untamed and maybe a couple matches playing this build. So yeah, it's definitely going to take some work. I do the pet swap here in my smoke skill F2 to get stealth, and I'm probably going to have to use my elite skill here to get some stability and resolution to be able to fight the Mirage. Now I think I put down the F3 field to block the projectiles, but I think there's a bug or something where it just doesn't appear if you do too many commands on your pet. So I'm going to do the swap combo there to get more quickness, but yeah, I have to be very careful in this matchup because even though you know, I have a lot of damage against this class, I don't have a lot of Condi Cleanse, so they're going to eventually do damage to me that'll stick. So I need to either sustain well or I need to play very safe. So here I land a really good hilt bash, but yeah, the staff too just allows them to get out of the maul. And my pet has some cooldowns. My Mechanist is actually here, so this is good. But I think the enemy Mirage is low on cooldown, so they're just going to leave. I'm going to chase them. I have Unnatural Traversal and Hilt Bash soon, so we're going to do that. And I land the maul. I think I missed the Hilt Bash, or I don't know what happened there. Maybe got blinded. But yeah, I have to back off now because I missed my combo. And here, my smoke scale is on the target, and I actually use the smoke scale F1 as they turn the corner, and I do a hammer combo on them when they get CC'd. So that kind of shows the potential coordination that you're able to do with the Untamed, which can lead to some interesting combos and counterplays. But here we're going to try to chase this Mechanist. They get stuck in a wall, so we're just going to finish them off real quick. And we're going to probably head into mid if we can. We actually have far and home now, so we're coming back here. I'm going to come into here with my Hilt Bash combo maybe. No, it's on cooldown, so I'm just going to maul. Yeah, we have fears and stuff for this Ranger. We're just going to CC them into my pet there. I actually did that was a pretty good combo to keep them in place. So I went in front of them and knocked them back towards my pet, and then I used my F1 of my pet to CC them, which was pretty nice. Allowed us to get that kill very quickly. And then we're going to come into far, but yeah, our team is all dying here, so I have to play very safely, and we're losing home. So this is potentially not the best. I do have Unnatural Traversal and my Hilt Bash ready, so I might go for a kill here. Yeah, I see the NG. I do the Hilt Bash. I swap to my Gazelle, and we're going to do tons of damage here with the hammer as well. And that's going to be a pretty good kill for us. But we are losing all of the nodes. We have to kind of like get back on the map. Now, it's not too important that we win this. It's just an unranked match. And as you can see, the Ranger is not really using the best build here. It's like Stone Spirit. So it's not really too important. But, you know, it's an unranked match during a beta. You know, not every player is going to be the best. Speaking of which, this guy is playing a meta Fireweaver build. So we're going to try, well, we tried to do the hammer CC into Unnatural Traversal there, but they were in a no port spot, so that was kind of unfortunate. I would like to see Unnatural Traversal also not go off if you're not in range to the target, because you can sort of use it when the target is not, you know, they're either in stealth or you don't even have a target. So it doesn't really have a purpose in that case because you don't get any value off of cantrips, right? So why even allow it to be wasted? But anyways, we need to probably, to win this match, we probably need to go into home, but I'm staying at mid because I know that this mech can't hold this by themselves. I'm going to try to go for the CC into Unnatural Traversal on the Ellie here. I land a decent amount of damage, but yeah, my pet's going to die. I have to swap it. And I'm trying to bait them off the node, but they have stability. Yeah, so it's going to be difficult. I try to go for the CC from my pet, but yeah, there is quite a bit of burns going out while they're evading there. So my pet's gonna die. I have to swap it, but I know the pet's dead, so I'm just gonna wait anyways. And I go for the hilt bash combo, but it misses, so that's gonna probably be the end of this because we can't defend this against them. So yeah, they're gonna get the kills on our team here, and they're gonna win the match. But if you like this kind of content, like and subscribe. If you want to support me, check out the links below, and also leave a comment in the comment section that will sort of be constructive criticism or promote other discussion. And I will see you all next time.